Worst factory or enterprise in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Experience of a worker. Stanford experiment was held on Stanford University. Psychologist Mr. Zimbardo made interesting experiment, and that experiment showed how people tend to enroll themselves in their roles or vocations or positions in society. For example, worker is, we can say for worker that he's passive, quiet, he works, he don't think about the organization of the job, he do not plan, he just works. Worker do not complains mostly. And on the other side we have bosses. Bosses can be tyrants. There are also good bosses, but this experiment, Stanford experiment, showed that boss or the guards of that prison can have really negative characteristics of character. And prison was some type of concentration camp. Concentration camp, I can say for this particular worst factory or enterprise in Bosnia. I will not say its name, but I will tell you something about this particular worst factory or enterprise in Bosnia. Here in this factory, people tolerated, workers tolerated bad conditions, bad bosses, and bad leaders or owners of the company or this one factory. People or workers do not have alternate job or some type of alternative income, so they needed this job to work in this factory, so they tolerated all the bad bosses, all the bad characteristics of characters of these particular dudes. In this factory, payment was low. Why workers didn't complain? Because they are lazy and lawyers are expensive. Also, if they complain, they need to do some type of work to do it, so they are lazy to go to complain because it takes time and work, and they have other things to do in their day. So this factory had bosses, and those bosses were nitpicking tyrants. Head of the enterprise or factory or director, he rarely was visiting workers. He rarely spoke with workers. He rarely held organized meetings with the workers. So basically there was that distance, psychological distance, emotional distance between director and his team and the working class, working people. So I think that at this example of the one of the worst factories in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we can see how Stanford experiment is a really good experiment. It is a doubtful experiment and not liked by many psychologists, but I still think that Stanford experiment is important because it can show us how people can create negative or bad characteristics in their behavior by enrolling in their vocation, in their social roles or class, etc. We can have many. If you are in society positioned as some type of working part or class, you can have, of course, positive characteristics. But if the overall atmosphere and the overall atmosphere and the notional level of happiness in the factory, you can create negative characteristics. For example, for the worker, here we can see negative characteristic that they do not want to complain. They are passive, quiet. They don't want to think about the organization of the job. They do not protest, etc. Also, on the side of the bosses, we can see that bosses or chiefs are tyrants. They are bad. They have aggressive, bad characteristics. They developed bad characteristics because the surrounding and the emotional feeling in this factory was similar to those feelings in concentration camps. In prison camps, that type of surrounding there was in this worst factory or enterprise in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I want and I think I can make a parallel between Stanford experiment, because in Stanford experiment we have a prison, we have prisoners and guards. And here in this factory we have workers, they can be prisoners, and we have guards who are bad, they behave bad. And here in this factory we have chiefs or bosses that are bad, that are really bad person. So I think that is a good parallel, and I think that Stanford experiment can learn something. Maybe we can learn something from that experiment. I know that some psychologists like it, some do not like it. Most people think that it is a pseudo science, but I think that there is some value in that experiment held by Mr. Dr. Zimbardo.